Welcome to Courtney on Health, heard on malcolmpresents.com. I always want to say new, but it's not new anymore. A streaming network
Not new.
producing new shows for your entertainment and
Information.
personal gratification.
Personal gratification. That's an interesting one. Okay.
And
So,
edification.
all right.
Anyway,
So
welcome, guys.
I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna start it off. So
Start it
again,
off.
hi Courtney again, and hi Malcolm. Welcome to Courtney on Health, a Zoomcast podcast series which focuses on one's overall well-being. And boy, do we need to have overall well-being these days, with tips on nutrition and exercise given by Courtney Gravenese, who's a registered dietitian and exercise physiologist. She's an experienced nutritional and health consultant in the New York metro area, in the US, in Europe, Asia, all over the place, and will help guide you on a path to wellness and health. So, what came to mind when you sent me this info this week was the song On the Road Again, Willie Nelson's on, and he's, the lyric is, I can't wait to get on the road again, making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again. And I do love that song. I love that tune, but you have to be mindful of how you're on the road, what you're eating, and your physical and mental well-being when you're out traveling, because that's an important thing. Road trips are fun, and traveling is a wonderful way to explore the world, but adventurous eating of local cuisine and the stress of travel can lead to some issues, because you don't want to wind up in the infamous water closet. You want to be visiting, the castle, right? And not the castle with the porcelain gods. So you really wind up spending time out, and you need to understand that while you're out there, you can get stomach issues from the food and from the different place you are. And it could cause often like heartburn, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. And again, you don't want that on vacation.
Sounds great.
I know. Well, it's that Pepto commercial with the pink. They're wearing pink like Barbie. Maybe they should change it to Barbie. Barbie. It's so huge now. So making healthy diet and lifestyle choices can improve digestion and avoid unwanted symptoms. And Courtney has some great tips on how to improve your digestion when you are on the road, on vacation. And let's go with that. So Courtney, what you caption this GI woes during summer travel. So yes. What are the common symptoms? Just give us some background on this.
Sure. So the woes can be anything from, and I'm really, really sorry if somebody's eating lunch or about to, it could be anything from constipation, diarrhea, gassiness, distension, bloating, any of the above. And it is not uncommon for these to happen when people travel. And that's whether somebody's taking a car drive or if they're flying on a cruise ship. It doesn't matter what the type of travel is. Why? Well, we eat differently typically when we're on vacation. Not always, but sometimes we eat more, and we definitely may be eating different foods than what we're preparing at home. That can affect your gut. We may be skipping meals. We may be eating later in the day, or in some cases earlier in the day. If you're trying to get up earlier to go do an activity, it's a different schedule than what you're used to. Certainly there's less fluid intake, so that you might be consuming less water than you normally would be. You may be consuming more alcohol than you might typically if you drink at all. Big one, you're not exercising regularly, or your activity level is not what it would be. So if you think about it, even if you have a particularly active vacation, it still might not be what you typically do in terms of not only the calories expended, but the type of activity that you're doing. Simply the stress of travel can wreak havoc on your gut. So take travel out of the mix. Stress always has an impact on digestion. So for some of us, worse than others. And then of course, heat, change in altitude, all of these can have some type of effect on your gut. So It's not uncommon. The whole idea, though, is to be a little bit prepared, so that hopefully you can avoid them, these issues. But if it does happen to you, to be a little bit prepared so you're not ruining and tapping into that very, very precious vacation time.
Right. I mean, I go, I mean, yes, yes to all of that. And especially, you know, if you're going out of the country and, you know, you're just completely off, your diet is going to be, for the most part, really off as to what it usually is. But also, is it wise to take meds with you like Pepto or Imodium, or because sometimes you can't find the
Yeah.
chemist or the pharmacy, as they call it, and you need something right away. I mean, what do you do to like try to prevent certain things? And then if you get, you know, have a problem, shouldn't you have those things on hand?
Sure. So let's tackle the list of what you can do, and we'll definitely talk about the over-the-counter or even prescription medications that you can bring along with you. So we mentioned that hydration is going to be key, but in this, again, whether you're traveling on a plane or in a car, the key though is consistency of a fluid intake spread throughout the day. So what I mean by that is, if you throw back a gallon size container of water first thing in the morning and then check that box of I've had my fluid intake, it is not the same. You know, in actuality, you're probably going to end up urinating out that much water at once. So rather than thinking of it as lots of water at one time, think about small amounts of water spread throughout the day. So it's that consistency throughout the day, spread throughout the day, is going to be key. If you're flying, so we know that cabin air is very, very drying. So you want to pay special attention to staying well hydrated before, during, and after your flight. Clearly, you're going to want to keep an eye on alcohol intake. Best would be not to drink alcohol at all, since it is very dehydrating. One of my favorite beverages to have, first of all, it's hard for me to not have seltzer. And let's just talk about that for a second. Cabin pressure, in addition to being very drying, right, puts a lot of pressure, as the name implies, on your gut. So it's going to create in almost everybody some gassiness. So the last thing you want to do is bring in or introduce any more carbonation or gas than what would be there normally. So that would mean stay away from, you know, even if it's diet soda, seltzers. As much as I love seltzer, it is not a great go-to airplane beverage. Stick with still water, dilute juices. One of my favorites, and I don't have an issue with sodium, so this is actually an option for me, is tomato juice, really ice cold tomato juice. So I've knocked out something from my fluid intake, and I'm also getting some lycopene and some vitamin C on board to help bolster immunity. So think non-carbonation, think non-alcoholic, and you also want to think about maybe ratcheting back, and you know, guys, I rarely say this, but ratcheting back your very high fiber intake the day of travel and day before. Why? Same thing. The cabin pressure is going to put enough pressure on your GI system. So try not to tax it even more by having, you know, a big bowl full of, you know, beans, greens, and cabbage and so forth in the same 24-hour window. So just pull back a little bit on that, just to help lessen some of the gas and pressure inside your intestines and your stomach.
I usually have cranberry juice with some seltzer in it. Is that like a no-no? Because it kind of,
yeah, I mean, so
I don't drink seltzer by itself, but I that's my usual go-to drink.
Yeah.
So
Is it something you could take to line the stomach, you know, the day before, 2 days before, that would line the stomach to prevent any of the things happening?
It's not an acid issue, Malcolm, as much as it is a gas, issue. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to take something like a Beano, but there's no data to suggest that it's going to help either. But if you have it in the house, it's certainly not going to hurt.
Now,
So
I'm
back to your
talking
question,
about foods or drink that could line the stomach, or that would be good for digestion or to prepare you for this.
I would say no. I mean, if it's something you take every day normally or on a regular basis, then yes, you want to stick with your routine and your typical schedule. but I would not suggest as a sort of prophylactic preventative measure to have those on board. We simply just don't have the information to say that that's going to work or not. But if it's part of your routine, you're going to want to stick with your routine. And Maxine, with regard to your question, if it's just a splash of carbonation in there, and you're not having a problem with it while you're flying, I would say stick with what you know, and so a lot of it is how do you feel?
It's my
but
go-to.
generally,
Yeah.
You want to keep in mind we want things that are going to help encourage you to drink. And if taking away that seltzer and putting in water is not going to do it for you, then you're going to drink less, and we don't want that either. So,
Right.
So be mindful of those gassy foods, carbonation, alcohol intake, and then when you're on vacation, some people move more, but generally we're not doing the same amount of activity. So I call it the stir the pot method. All right, you want to have gravity working in your favor. And again, I apologize if you're eating. The reality is, if you're more sedentary between sitting on a plane, sitting in a car, maybe you're on a cruise ship and there's not enough space for you to be doing your normal walking routine or whatever, type of aerobic activity you're doing, that's absolutely going to affect how often and you go and how regular you are. So stir that pot, stay as active as you can, even if it's a stroll on a city street, new city street you're in, or a walk on the beach. Try to do what you can to try and keep that movement up.
Yeah, I've always heard when you're on a plane, you're supposed to get up like about once every half hour and walk around the aisles for the circulation.
Yes, it's a great idea, particularly for long haul flights. So many of us, even if we're not at risk for blood clotting, should pay special attention to that. Take a lap, up in, the planes are not very big, but back and forth, do some calf stretching. So absolutely, with regard to, that's not necessarily GI related, that's more circulatory related, but not a bad idea to take a lap on the plane several times and do some of that calf stretching throughout the day to help with the likelihood of clot development.
Compression socks is a good thing too. Some for travel. I have compression socks that have flamingos on them.
I like that.
Yeah, that's it. That's my go-to thing.
They need some serious compression socks on those legs.
I do.
Now it seems like in today, what I read about in today's flying, it is very stressful because of the delays. And is there anything you could do about that? As far as should you take a tranquilizer? I mean,
I was just going to say that,
or some sort of thing to relax. Is there anything to do to relax you?
I'm a big believer in, first of all, planning for what you can, and then, managing what you can't the best that you can. So deep breathing is big. Some people simply get stressed out when the plane takes off and lands, and they get very, very anxious flying. So positive visualization, deep breathing, is all very, very helpful. We could do a whole episode on, sort of the mindfulness component of reducing stress in general, but particularly stress that is related to travel. So all of that is going to help. Tranquilizers, if you're doing a long haul flight, you're changing time zones, you first of all talk to your healthcare provider about options for you, because having a medication or an anti-anxiety medication is not always going to be the answer. So that's a conversation for certainly your healthcare provider to make it as comfortable for you as possible. Now, for over-the-counter medication, again, specifically with regard to GI issues, not a bad idea. Particularly if you're checking luggage, because remember, we got to deal with all the fluid restrictions that there might be. So the best option, whether you're checking or not, would be powdered versions of things like Metamucil, Miralax, compounds like that don't have any liquids in them, so you're not going to have any TSA issues. You can sprinkle it in your food, and it may help with your regularity. If bloating and or constipation are your issue when you travel. So do keep that in mind. Colace now, which is a stool softener, you can get over the counter now. So consider bringing that with you. Now, listen, if you're in a big city like London or something, or anywhere within the United States, big city, you're not going to have a problem finding these. These are really to help you if you aren't going to someplace convenient, either within the United States or in a big city around the world, and it becomes a problem and then you're stuck. So no pun intended. You want to make sure you have these available to you. So certainly consider those options. Keep your routine in the morning as consistent as you can. Now, I realize vacations are different. You might be in a different time zone. You might be getting up at a different time. You may be getting up and out because you want to go do activities. But keep in mind, for many people, that first morning routine is sacred, right? And that's how they create their regularity. So as best you can, if it's tea in the morning that you drink or a cup of coffee that you drink and you need those first 15 minutes, build in that extra 15 minutes and that time to help you get back into your usual morning routine that may ultimately help with keeping you regular, before you set out.
Back to hydrating a second and back to actual water.
Mm-hmm.
When you're traveling, the water, I mean, we're lucky where we live to have incredible water. But if you're going out of the country, I mean, unless it's a, huge city, there are issues with water and you got to be really, really careful.
Right.
And so, I mean, you could be careful in getting, which I hate is bottled water, but, I don't know. It's definitely something because you don't know, sometimes when they're washing a fruit or vegetable, I mean, you're going to get the remnants of any bacteria. What can you do about that?
Right. So let's address the water issue. And I'm with you, Maxine. We try and use, and I always encourage people to use a reusable water bottle whenever they can. And many places will either have not necessarily distilled, but purified water for you to use. But if you're in a particular part of the world that is less developed and running the risk of issues with water, you really, I hate to say it, but bottled water might be your only option, unless you can get a guarantee that the water supply is safe to drink. So if not, you got to go the bottled water route. With regard to produce, so fruits and vegetable intake, same rule is going to apply. Some hotels, even in areas that are less developed, can guarantee that their water is safe to drink, and then the produce is being rinsed with that. In the absence of that, you really want to stick with things that can be peeled. So good options would be melon, would be bananas, would be anything citrus. So those pineapple, for example, so those have a nice thick peel on it. The peel would be removed anyway, and then you can have those delicious fruits very safely without running the risk of the residual water. Same thing with brushing teeth. I remember vividly taking some trips where we had to use the bottled water to brush our teeth. So,
Me too.
It's a very much case by case. But with, obviously you want to be able to eat those foods because they're so high in fiber, they're very hydrating, they're going to help with constipation. But unfortunately, if you're not careful, you're going to end up on the other side of the spectrum and you may land yourself with a bout of diarrhea, which clearly nobody wants on vacation. Right. But same thing with your luggage. If you're able to packing something like, now I typically don't like recommending things like Imodium or Lomotil. I think vomiting and diarrhea are your body's way of clearing what it does not want in its body. But let's face it, you spent thousands and thousands of dollars on this vacation, and you don't have the luxury of 2 days in a hotel room. So this is where things like these antidiarrheals are really going to be helpful. So if you're going to an area of the world where you think that might be a problem, throwing some of that in your, checked luggage will serve you well. Hopefully you won't need it, but if you do, you got it.
Some of them have, I mean, the liquids are better, but there's some of them have, the chewables or the other. I mean, that's easy. You can throw that in your carry-on or whatever you're taking. So just to have stuff with you is, I think, important. At least that's what I found traveling to whatever countries I'm going to, especially because you got to know what's there. But it's and also just you are running around a lot. At least I do. When I go to a foreign country, I'm doing more walking, probably like 20,000. I mean, you just, depending where it is, of course, unless you're going to a beach. But in that case, I'm hopefully snorkeling and swimming a lot.
Do they have any like in each country or in the United States, they have like a list of countries and what to avoid or what to look for or what to be prepared for. So if I'm going to Mexico or if I'm going to Central America or South America, then they say this is what you're supposed to look for, this is what to avoid, or to Europe or to Asia. Is there any organization that gives you?
You mean specifically with regard to foods and beverages?
It's a precautionary type of thing.
I think if you went to sort of the travel bureau of each travel area, maybe there's something along those lines. I mean, I know that they post things like if there's a particular mosquito or dengue fever or I know there are things like that. I just
think
don't
on
know
the
if there's
State
something-
Department, yes, if you go to the
Yes,
State
thank you.
Department
Yes.
website, you can, for the country, it'll tell
Yeah.
you if you know the safety of the
Yes.
country. They give it, you know, stars or numbers, whatever. And I
And
think
w-
if there's a problem with a particular disease or something, I think they put that on there. But I don't know. I don't think I've seen food, but I don't know. I would have to look.
But anyway, guys, our time is up.
All right.
Woo! Wow.
Safe travels, everyone.
Yeah,
That was really fast.
that was fast.
That
Anyway,
was
thank you very much,
beyond
Courtney.
fast.
Thank you,
All right.
Maxine.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, and have a safe and pleasant tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
All right.
have a great trip. And you've been listening to Courtney on Health, heard
Okay.
on malcolmpresents.com.
Let me
And,
do the outro so we know where to
do
get
the
info
outro.
from. So Courtney's info could be given out. And here we are. Thanks for joining us for Courtney on Health. To get more info, follow Courtney on her Facebook page, Courtney on Health, on Instagram at CLG Wellness, and on TikTok with the same handle. Visit her website, CourtneyGravenese.com. For past shows, go to malcolmpresents.com and the manyshadesofgreen.com, and also follow Courtney's podcast on all the podcast apps. So it's been Courtney on Health. It's been for smart, sound nutrition, strong, safe fitness, and we'll catch you again next time.
And
Bye, guys.
bon voyage.
Bon voyage.